Okay, today you're going to learn about some properties that we use in math, and I just want you to listen very carefully, take good notes. The first little bit is just going to be information, and I just want you to pay attention. You can circle things if you need to, you can underline, you can highlight, whatever you need to do to make sure that you understand these three properties that I'm going to go over. The first property is the commutative property. Okay, and this property is when you're changing the order of add-ins or factors, but it does not change the sum or the product. So this would be important. I would underline changing the order does not change the sum or product. Now, you can see that this applies to addition, because 5 plus 8 is the same thing as 8 plus 5, which we talked about that yesterday when we were writing our expressions. Because if you look over here at the algebra, A plus B is the same thing as B plus A. Alright, so with addition, changing the order doesn't matter, and same with multiplication. 5 times 8 is the same as 8 times 5. And with algebra, A times B is the same thing as B times A. With addition and multiplication, you can change the order and it does not change the value. That is the commutative property. You can think of that in terms of a community, people working together, moving around. So you can move the numbers around and it does not change the value. The next property is associative properties. Changing the grouping of add-ins or factors, meaning with addition or multiplication, does not change the sum or product. Okay, so right here it's changing the grouping that we're looking at. Okay, so if you notice here, the numbers are still in the same order. Okay, back to the commutative property, the numbers were switched around. Here, the numbers stay in the same order. You have 7 plus 4 plus 2, but the 7 and 4 are in parentheses. Whereas over here, you have 7 plus 4 plus 2, but the 4 plus 2 are in parentheses. The parentheses got moved to the second set of numbers. And that's called the associative property. If you notice, the same thing is with multiplication. The 7 times 4 in parentheses, now we've got 4 times 2 in parentheses. And the same thing works with your algebra here. Okay, so with commutative, the numbers move around. With associative, we just group them differently. We just use parentheses to group numbers, but they're in the same order. So that might be something you want to write beside associative property. The numbers are in the same order. It's just the grouping that was changed. Okay, and the third property is the distributive property. When you think of the word distribute, it means to hand out. Okay, and so the distributive property is when it says to multiply a sum or difference by a number. Multiply each number in the sum or difference by the number outside the parentheses. Okay, so here you can see here that we've got 3 times 7 is right here, and then we have 3 times 2 is right here. Or same thing with the subtraction. 3 times 7 is right here, and then 3 times 2 is right here. And the same thing is true if you had letters. It still works the same way. If you're not quite sure about that property, I think once we start doing some examples, you'll understand it better. Okay, here we go. Use the properties to simplify the expressions and tell which property you are using. All right, so let's look at number 1. Here we have 7 plus 12 plus x, and the 12 plus x is in parentheses. Well, we know we can't add 12 plus x because we don't know what x is. So in order to simplify this, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to move the parentheses to right here. So we're going to write 7 plus 12 in parentheses and then have our plus x out here. Who remembers what property that is? Is that the associative? Is that the commutative? Or is that the distributive property? That is the associative property. If you said associative, you are right. I'm going to try to write it up here. And you can abbreviate it if you want, ASSOC, associative property. Now we're not done because we can go ahead and we can add 7 plus 12. 7 plus 12 would be 19 and then bring down the plus x. And that is as far as you can get it. So there's two answers here. The fact that you use the associative property and that it's simplified to 19 plus x. We can't add 19 and x because we don't know what x is. Okay, number 2. We're going to do the same thing here. All right, we cannot add 6.1 and x. So we have to figure out something else that we can do. Now, the first step would be, we know that we can change the order here and write x plus 6.1 instead of 6.1 plus x. We can switch those and then have the plus 8.4. Okay, so all we did there is we switched the order. We did not move the parentheses, we switched the order. So what property would that be if the order is changed? If you're thinking commutative, that's right. So write commutative under there. All right, then what we're going to do is we are going to move the parentheses because that still didn't help us do any simplifying. We weren't able to make that expression smaller. So what we're going to do now is we are going to move the parentheses so that, just leave your x out here, plus, and then let's put the parentheses around 6.1 plus 8.4. Because those are two numbers we can add together. Now what is that called when you move the parentheses? We did not change the order, we just grouped a different pair of numbers. That is the associative property. And then finally, now it's finally to the point where we can actually do some simplifying because what's in parentheses we are able to add together. So we bring down our x plus, and then you need to figure out 6.1 plus 8.4. If you're saying 14.5, then you are correct. So x plus 14.5 is the simplified expression, and we had to use the commutative property first and then the associative property in order to simplify. Number 3, we have to simplify 5 parentheses 11y. Now we know that a number outside of a parentheses, or you need to know, means multiplication. Okay, so we have, that's basically 5 times 11y. Well, what we're going to need to do first, because 11 can't be multiplied by y, 11y, that doesn't help us because we don't know what y is. What we need to do is we need to put the 5 times 11 in parentheses like this, and then we'll leave the y out here. Now, when you move the parentheses, that is the associative property. And by doing that, now we are able to simplify this because the numbers that are in the parentheses, 5 times 11, are 55. So we have 55y as our simplified answer. Number 4. All right, now, this is the distributive property. So we have a 3, we can't do x plus 5, those can't be added together, okay? And because there's a plus in the middle of the parentheses, that is different from how we did number 3. So when you have a number outside the parentheses, what you're going to do is you're going to do 3 times x. How do we write 3 times x? Remember, when we have a number and a variable, we just put them side by side, so we have 3x. And then you're going to do 3 times 5. And 3 times 5 is 15. Now make sure that you put the plus sign in the middle. So that is the simplified answer. It is just 3x plus 15. And again, that is the distributive property. Now I know that's new. All right. If you need something to kind of help you figure out what you did, you could write 3 parentheses x, because you did that, 3 times x to get that, plus, and then we did 3 times 5, and that's how we got the 15. So that might be helpful for you to jot down. Okay, number 5, we're going to do the same thing. We've got a number outside of our parentheses, and inside our parentheses we have a plus. So we are going to do 8 times 3 8 times 3 would be 24. Now because there's a plus, we're going to put plus, and then we have to do 8 times x. 8 times x is 8x. That is the distributive property. Now there is one thing that I want you to know. When we're doing the distributive property and we have our expression, it is important that we go ahead and try and put our term that has the variable first. So we're going to write 8x and then put plus 24. And we know that order is okay because remember with plus, you can change things around and that's okay. So 8x plus 24 is how I would like it rewritten. And actually, when you're doing that, that really is the commutative property. That it's okay to do that with addition. Okay, number 6. Now, notice the plus sign here. So this is different from number 5. It's not 10 times everything in the parentheses, okay, because of that plus sign. So we start out by asking ourselves, we can't do a plus 9 because we don't know what a is. So what we're going to do first is we are going to reorder that. So leave the 10 alone, plus, and then let's move this so that we have 9 plus a. And you might say, well, how do you know what to do first? Well, if we move this so that if we flip it so that we have 9 plus a, you can start to see that right here, we'll be able to eventually put those in a parenthesis where we can add those together because those two numbers can be added together. Okay, so I'm going to take that off. So for right now, all you did is you took the a plus 9 and you wrote 9 plus a. So we just changed the order. We did not change the parentheses. So when you change the order of something, remember that is the commutative property. All right, now we're going to change our parentheses so that we can have 10 plus 9 in parentheses and then just have the plus a out here. That is the associative property because we associated some different numbers together. We moved the parentheses. 10 plus 9 is 19 plus a. Now that is acceptable, but if you remember back to what I was explaining back here on number 5, remember we like the variable to be first if we can. So we can change this to say a plus 19. Really, 19 plus a and a plus 19 are the same. Either one of those are acceptable. This is just something, if you'll learn to try to rewrite it this way, that will help you for when you move into algebra. Okay, and speaking about that, putting the variable first, I just realized that back on number 1, we could have taken this and written it as x plus 19. But like I said, it is the same. It is the same. 19 plus x and x plus 19. It's just that's going to start to help you when you get into algebra if you'll learn to put the variable first. Number 2 was already good to go. Number 3, that is just 55 times y, so we know we have to put the number in front there. Number 4, we already had the term with the variable first, so we were good there. Number 5 is when we kind of learned to rewrite it. Number 6 is what we were just talking about. Okay, number 7. We can't do 4 times n because we don't know what n is. So we're going to reorder and we're going to put 5 times 4 in a parenthesis and then just have the times n out here. Because there is a multiplication sign right in here and there's a multiplication sign right in there. That is 5 times 4 times n is basically what that is. Okay, we're going to group the 5 and 4 together. By doing that, we move the parenthesis. So therefore, that is the associative property. 5 times 4 would then be 20n. So that would be the simplified expression. Okay, number 8. Okay, notice we've got a minus in here. And we've got a number out front here. And it's right up against the parentheses. So that means multiplication. That means 5 times m minus 4. So we're going to use our distributive property. We're going to do 5 times m, which is 5m. You just put the number and the variable together, minus, and then do 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20. And that one's good to go. Notice the variable's in front, so you're good to go. You do just need to write this is the distributive property. Okay, number 9 and 10. If you want to pause this and try them on your own, you can, and then just check back, but you do need to simplify it and tell which property you're using. Okay, on this, we can't add C plus 6 because we don't know what C is. So we're going to group it this way first. So I'm going to write C plus, and then I'm going to put my 6 plus 12.7 in parentheses. And by moving the parentheses, that is called the associative property. Okay, and after doing that, we're good. Leave the C alone plus, and then 6 plus 12.7, 6 plus 12 would be 18.7. And that is the simplified answer. And the variable's in front, so you're good to go. Number 10, okay, all that's being multiplied together, we can't do 10 times C because we don't know what C is, so we have to reorder the parentheses. So we're going to do 6 times 10 in parentheses and then times C out here. Moving the parentheses is the associative property. 6 times 10 would be 60 times C. Now, remember, we could do that, but really we're supposed to write it 60C. You don't need to put the multiplication symbol in between the number and the variable. That's the only one that can be left out, is the multiplication if it's side by side. Okay, and the last one, number 11. You and 6 friends play on a basketball team. The sponsor paid $100 for the league fee, X dollars for each player's t-shirt, and $68.25 for trophies. Write an expression for the total amount paid by the sponsor. Then simplify and list the properties you used. Okay, so let's start out with what we have first. The sponsor paid $100 for the league fee. Okay, so we have $100. Plus, they paid X dollars for each player's t-shirt. So they paid X amount of money for each player's t-shirt. Well, how many players were there? If you said 6, you're not right because it's you and 6 friends. So you and 6 is really 7 players. And each t-shirt was X amount of dollars. Well, we don't know what X is, so there's 7 players and it's X amount of money for each of the players. And each means to multiply, so you're going to write 7x because it's 7 times x. Plus, and then we still have the $68.25 for trophies. Okay, so that was the first step, was writing the expression. The next step is to reorder it so that you can simplify it. Okay, now remember, the first thing you need to do is you need to get this into an order where you can add some things together. And as you look, you can't add 100 plus 7x because those can't be combined. We don't know what x is. And we cannot add 7x plus 68.25. If you notice, what we could add would be 100 and then 68.25. So let's move them so that they're side by side. So let's write 100 plus 68.25. Or actually, yes, okay, that's fine. And then you have your plus 7x. So you need to add, and that would be, which property would that be when you move the numbers around? If you said commutative property, you're right. So somewhere write that commutative property is what you used. Okay, and then 100 plus 68.25 should be 168.25, and then you have your plus 7x. That's simplifying it. Now, if you remember from before, looks like maybe there's one more thing that you could do here, and it is the commutative property, again, so that it is in a form that will help you towards algebra. If you said move the 7x to the front, you're right. 7x plus 168.25 would be the final simplified answer. Technically, these are both the same answer, and they are both simplified. I'm just kind of trying to help you learn that you can move that variable to the front. Okay, that is the end. Do your best on your homework, and we will grade it on Monday.